Okay, so welcome. I'm Richard Dancy and I will be the host for today's session. So what a year we've had. I think we can all agree that the pandemic has changed many things, including what consumers now expect and what they deem important when it comes to making their buying decisions. With that in mind, we're here today to discuss the tension between hygiene and the aesthetic beauty of packaging and answer the question of today, which is, will the consumer focus on hygiene mark the end of unboxing experiences? We'll also be discussing findings of consumer research, which we conducted on the subject. And joining me today is my colleague, Stefan Pryor, who is Senior Product Manager at James Cropper, and he's focused on our packaging portfolio, new products and innovations. So who would have thought infection control would be a major discussion point in relation to packaging? It has been quite a year, as I said. So let's start by discussing the shift in mindset. Paul, over to you. I know you've seen a real change in demand.
I first met James Cropper about 15 years ago when we started to innovate with MRSA in hospitals, and they heard what we could do. And at the time, we were only in polymers, but because we had this true innovation base, when we were asked, could you put this into paper? Instead of saying, no, we can't, we haven't got a product for that, it was like, well, let's have a go. So after a 6-month period of developing the product, we launched it and we were first to market, and that's where the relationship has grown on from there. I mean, we've measured it recently. We've got 12 times more samples going through to the antimicrobial testing lab. So we're literally doing in a month what we did in a year. Our business has been a massive, massive impact.
2020 has been a bit of a strange year because we've had experience of this in the past, and then now with the pandemic, it's broadened our application of the AdMaster treatment onto other products in packaging that has been, such a focus for everybody as packaging's been coming into people's homes, and they've been unboxing and handling, and so it's from my experience, really, it's been a real circle of how it's been used.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how things, we never know what's going to happen, do we? So, okay, thanks for that intro, Paul and Stefan. So we've actually done some research as well. We found that over 3/4 of consumers now consider the hygiene of products and packaging they interact with while browsing in store or when purchases are delivered. Over to you, Jenny, at Butterfly Cannon. Do you agree that the pandemic has changed consumer attitude?
Yeah, I think it's definitely had an impact on everyone. You can't say it's specific to certain areas. It's been a global shift. I think that's the biggest thing that's been brought on by the pandemic. Obviously, it's had a really negative impact on lots of things, but actually it's offered up these opportunities and these learnings for companies to grow in maybe different directions that they could only foresee in 15 or so years. And now it's switched it on its head. But I totally get that hygiene is a big factor of it, because it is, people will be nervous about handling things. It's what we hear all the time, and you have conflicting information from different people, but there's always going to be that worry. We've been using bleach for years. Like, people know that there's germs on surfaces, and now it's becoming more prevalent of how does that all carry out, what happens, and people are nervous. So I think it's kind of creating that balance of hygiene. I don't think unboxing is dying. I think actually it's adding a whole other level of thinking of stuff and sustainability combined.
Would you say, so for example, 10, 15 years ago, maybe, sustainability wasn't as big as it is now when brands or people are designing the packaging? It might have been a consideration, but it wasn't perhaps at the top of the agenda in terms of incorporate it in the final design. So it would have been more led on appearance, and sustainability would have been a second thought. And whereas now I think sustainability is right up there with design. Do you think that with everything that's going on with the pandemic and this focus on hygiene, that at this stage it's just about the awareness, and then eventually it could reach a stage where hygiene, sustainability, and design are all, equal in some sorts when designing packaging?
Yes, I totally agree with the first comment where you said about 10, 15 years ago. My focus was more on production, and it was sustainability was a kind of, you know, it's a nice to have, like, oh, that's lovely, but actually I've told you I want this kind of thing. It sounds awful, but that's how people are. That's how it was. I think more recently, especially in the last 6 months, you're getting a lot more of our clients. We had this conscious design process in place for the last little while, and it was more something that we were plugging towards people to be like, hey, we need to think about this more, and we want it to be in the thing. But now people are starting to ask more for, like, we need this to be sustainable. You're seeing people get sustainable development goals across really big companies, like when you see Diageo, Pernod Ricard, people like that. They are overarching goals and they've got ambitions, and people like Coca-Cola as well. You can see it, it's coming out every day, and every ad that you see on the TV now mentions it, like Audi cars, some Amazon, everyone is mentioning things that I swear in the last 6 months, not saying that I watch a lot of TV, but it must be on quite a bit now. But I'm seeing loads more advertising towards it. So people are making strides in sustainability rather than it being on the back burner. It's now becoming at the forefront. And I think actually design gives you the opportunity. It's the very first hurdle you come across. If you design something that can't fit within the system or can't work towards the system, then you've got a fundamental flaw, because it's a thing that's going out to the customers. So you won't ever make a closed loop or anything like that. So I think it's really integral to be in design with that section. I think regards to the hygiene section of it, I think it's going to be a balance of, you know, people don't want to be unboxing loads and loads of things. Like, if people are wary of stuff, why would you give them more and more? It's about, you know, less is more. What is finally getting to that point where people have been saying that for a while, and now I think you're starting to see it shift in that direction.
I think sustainability, like you say, Jenny, has become mainstream. It's become headline, whereas some people have been talking about it, like yourself, and Prince Charles, for example, has been talking about it for 30, 40 years. And now he's proven that it's a big number one consideration. Do we think, and maybe I could bring in Paul here, do we think that hygiene, yourself, Paul, you've been talking about hygiene for 20 years or a long time. When do we think is the acceleration of that hygiene consideration becoming mainstream going to be a lot quicker? As in 2021, we're going to be hopefully all getting back out there and traveling and buying and consuming.
So I think it's firmly in everybody's psyche now how important hygiene is. And I remember when we used to go to the NHS with the case note folders, it was a real battle. It was a very, very small markup to make these products antimicrobial. But it was all about, does it fit into the budget? Because there was a budget for case note folders, and then there was a budget for hygiene, and the hospitals could never get them to actually blend together. So it was always a battle, and it was always a frustration. And at that time, we also discovered that a very similar additive we could put into clothes, and it would stop them smelling, because it would stop the breakdown of your sweat with these malodors that we associate with body odor. So we would look at all our figures and we'd say, look, humans are crazy. They'll spend far more money on not smelling, but when it comes to saving lives, we don't want to spend money on that. And that's really where the market kind of was, where you have to really justify it. It's completely changed it now. It's completely turned that on its head. And I think everybody is so focused on hygiene now. It's such an important part. We've seen massive, massive brands that have said, Paul, you need to help us, because if our competitor is on the shelf next to us and they say this is antiviral and ours isn't, the consumer's going to pick the antiviral one up. We know it. And I think that's where there's a key difference. And it just makes so much more sense for brand positioning to have this on there, but also for the brand to show they care about the person handling the product. I think it's pretty key. And just one, before I forget, in the last couple of weeks, I've had people ringing me up saying, should I send Christmas cards?
Yeah. And
I thought, what an interesting question to ask them. He said, Paul, because I get asked all weird questions like, when's the vaccine coming out? And I'm like, oh, I wish I knew. I mean, we do now. But they're worried about sending Christmas cards. They're worried about posting things through to their friends and elderly relatives. Is it an issue?
You're absolutely right, Paul. Sorry to interrupt you there, but Stefan, I just want to ask you, can you tell the listeners what our solution for Christmas cards is? Because we're obviously, as a paper company, we are sending a lot of Christmas cards out this year.
It's funny when you brought it out, because there was similar questions asked from some of our customers. But yeah, all our Christmas cards this year will be going out using the PaperGard technology. So decreasing any risk of cross contamination of the virus. So yeah, I mean, we similar things. People come in and asking, can they do this? Can they do that? Similar to yourself asking for if you've got a vaccine. But yeah, just touching back on what I said earlier, it's kind of like this life cycle of like awareness and demand, because this innovation's been available for 15 years and yet it's not been at the top of people's minds, and now very much is, because it's been drilled into us every day via the media.
Yeah, so opening Christmas cards we can put in the unboxing category, because it is part of that, the fears that and the unknown, as Paul said, that people don't understand at the moment. Helen, can I bring you in just about some of the IBM report findings that you could tell us about?
Yeah, so I've been reading recently. Obviously, I'm kind of looking at it more from a sustainable aspect. And there was a report from IBM earlier this year that found that 77% of consumers are now looking for brands that are sustainable and environmentally responsible. And I think from the discussion which we've just had, and there is, over the last 15 years, social responsibility of companies, has increased, and there's much more awareness about that across brands. And I think consumers, because of marketing communications now, they're very aware of what companies do, and I think it has to be embedded into the brand values of the company, and that being that kind of very socially responsible. And I think that's right through it, as you said about all of you, in fact, about it needs to be embedded right from the beginning, from the design of the product, through to sort of what's delivered to the consumer.
We certainly are focused very much on the circular economy. We're part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and partnership, and it's all about instead of throwing things away, how can they be used for longer and be recycled? And obviously, we've a number of initiatives that have used that circular economy idea and concept.
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, I think what we always try and do when we're providing solutions and working in collaboration with different partners in the supply chain is think about all the aspects of unboxing and the design of packaging or products, and consider how they can last and how they can last a lifetime. So, just coming back to what we were saying earlier, is that I think, well, it'd be interesting to understand what you guys think as well, but I think it's easier to design something into the product to begin with, and to enable it to last a lifetime than, think about it afterwards. And I think that's something that's kind of relevant for us going forward. So as part of the research we did, 62% of the people that were surveyed said that they would definitely consider a packaging or a product that was more likely to fight off pathogens such as COVID-19, MRSA, and others over an alternative box or bag that didn't. In terms of building for the future, I think hygiene, the aesthetics, how the product looks, and sustainability are going to be the kind of the three core elements of design in packaging, and I don't think that you necessarily have to compromise. So all can work in tandem. It's just being able to do that from the offset. It's just raising that awareness now of you can have products that are hygienic and you don't have to compromise on the appearance. So.
Yeah, I think the exact same. I think basically it's not seeing each thing as its own individual silo. Things can work together. I think a lot of people always go, oh, you only focus on this. Obviously, there is times where certain things take a hierarchy, where someone will be like, well, actually, it's this. And you'll get that from speaking to your clients and what they want to establish as a brand. I think also going back to what you were just saying a second ago, I think there's a great stat that said that 78% of packaging user materials that keep me and my family safe impacts brand trust. So it's that brand trust that I think is quite inherent within what people need from that safety first perspective, and alongside the sustainability. There's lots of stats saying people are looking at sustainability more, and obviously it's massive part of my job as well. There was one question I really wanted to ask Paul when he was speaking as well, and it would be from your side at Croppers as well, Stefan. But with people asking for this product, are people asking for it more on, like, say, a secondary pack, or are they looking at more on a shipper? So I'm thinking, if people are delivering stuff into retail, are people getting more interested in, what it comes in as that outer packaging? Or is it, if I think of a toothpaste tube, say, for example, you've got the toothpaste, so the primary pack, then you have it in a box, and then you put, let's say 36, I've just made up that number, into another packaging, so it gets delivered to the store so they can stack it there. Is it an increase in people wanting to use the product on that outer shipper, or is it on the secondary pack, or is it across everything? I was just curious, because obviously you've got different levels of handling at different points.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, I think part of the unboxing experience as well is linked to the fact that in some cases, or a lot of cases, you get to keep that box or that bag, and you might reuse that bag when you go and shopping another time, or you might keep that box to hold your shoes in the wardrobe. But yeah, I mean, for the products that we do, we've seen it across the board. So we've seen it for the demand for greetings cards, which are not as disposable as a cereal bar, like you say, but once they've been up for Christmas, they might get recycled. We've seen the demand on things we were doing that we mentioned earlier, case files for hospitals, posters, leaflets for hospitals. We've even done a collaboration with a company called Heritage Envelopes, where they create an envelope which holds cutlery in canteens, in hospitals, lots of different applications. So we've seen it across the board, and it is primarily on the primary packaging that we supply. I guess really we're not particularly as well known for supplying products that would be used for the shipper example, but we do supply into corrugated packaging. So we've seen increase in awareness there as well. I think it seems such a long time since the whole pandemic started, but relatively speaking, we're actually quite early on in that awareness stage. So whilst we've seen increased interest, we're also within the process of raising that awareness, and saying you can have a beautiful piece of packaging that's created with recycled fibers, but that also uses this technology that supports hygiene.
Because we're involved in the polymers and the paints and the papers and the textiles a whole lot, we're not seeing anybody wanting to necessarily protect what's in a pack. It's all about that there's a fear that people are worried who's touched the product before. And that fear was always there in a hospital environment and with the medical products we had. But now we're very aware that you can catch something pretty quickly. And the virus on most surfaces is going to be very virile and active for around 3 days. And people are, once someone's touched it, there's going to be that pool there, that pool of danger. It's going to diminish over time, but you don't know when someone's last touched that toothpaste tube on the shelf if you take it off. You don't know if someone's been posted to you. Was it posted yesterday, or was it posted 5 days ago? And so that, I think, is the key thing we're seeing, is that real fear factor coming in now, and people saying, I want extra protection. So if you look at our website at the moment, we used to put a launch on there, probably 2 or 3 a month sometimes. I've put 3 on in the last week because it's just so rapid. But the first one was as the trolley handles and baskets, which the TV adverts for it, I believe, are going live in the next day or so, where they're saying to people, if you use our trolleys and you touch the handles, they've got this treatment on it. So they're giving people that added assurance. The other one is a lovely one, because I've always wanted to be in these products, but until this has happened, it's never been possible, is the trunky suitcases. So they were released yesterday.
Oh, yes.
So the children now can go around on a trunky suitcase because the parents are worried that they're going to be picking up viruses and bacteria from an airport environment, when we can finally get back to that again. And then the third one was plastic instruments for schools. So a really interesting company called Warwick Instruments that make plastic trombones and trumpets for children that are actually far more hygienic than the brass ones. But it's about who has played on that instrument in the class before. and they wanted to see a dramatic decrease in viruses and bacteria. Anything that people touch now, they are instantly aware of who's touched that before. And that, I think, is where your products and the packaging come in. It's a very touchable product, and that unboxing, it's not just the visual, is it? It's the feel of it. It's the feel of opening something that feels good, feels quality. And I think you've got to take away, if you don't take away that risk, it can be really good, but they could be still doing this with it. And you don't want that. You want people to feel attracted to the product, not worried about it. And I think that's where that key difference is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree, Paul. And in fact, that's backed up with some research we did a couple of weeks ago, that 86% of people believe the concerns for safety and hygiene will remain after the pandemic.
Do you think it could be a generational thing as well? You know, so there'll be a generation of people that are more conscious of this sort of thing, and you know, when they're thinking of buying products, when they're thinking of unboxing, when they're just, you know, going about their normal lives, there will be that period where, you know, it's at top of their mind, and they'll always build it into everything that they do, because, you know, it's just think about what you're saying before, and, you know, people's habits. And so do you think it could be some, you know, bit of a generational thing like that?
I think it's impacted different people, hasn't it? Because ultimately there's going to be some people this year who've been shielding for a long time, you know, because of their health. And I think for those particular, that group of people, it's going to be very difficult for them to just return to normal life and, you know, society. So I think there's different consumer groups that are going to be impacted in different ways. I will also think, you know, that because of the pandemic and how people have changed their buying behaviour and how they've shopped recently, you know, that there is going to be, you know, hygiene is going to be important, because we're having more things delivered to our homes. You know, it was on the news last night that the footfall has dropped by 60%. So we're going to see a real change in sort of how people buy in future. And I think, you know, that we are going to be having, it's very likely because of the pandemic, more people have bought online, you know, particularly this Christmas, people being more aware of packaging coming into their house, you know, and products coming into their house. So getting that balance between sort of having hygienic packaging, but also, you know, that we're removing part of that experience, that shopping experience of being in a retail space where you can touch and try things on. So I think that's where the aesthetics comes in as well, you know, that people want to, if they want that kind of gift experience as well of that joy of buying, and that's why I think unboxing is going to be important after this year.
Yeah, there's almost an argument as well to say that, you know, if you extend the unboxing experience, part of that unboxing experience is actually making the purchase within a store. You know, getting up, going out with a friend or a family member, going to a store, experiencing the whole interaction with whoever you're buying from and their brand, and then taking that home and then unboxing it. And actually now, you know, we've all probably spent a lot on internet shopping during these last 6 months, but now there's almost that gap of that experience of going out and seeing people and buying something. So actually, you could almost argue that whilst hygiene is important because lots of things are coming to people's home, they want an elevated unboxing experience because they're losing out on the you know, human element of buying a product.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd be interested to know to the group really what defines a positive experience. As you say, Stefan, people want something extra. So what is it that they're looking to achieve or to experience when they unbox?
I've been reading about it recently, and you know that it's an added joy to the experience. It's about that reveal of a product, you know, and that the added value of adding joy to a purchase. And I think that's becoming more important now. We're not getting that experience with on the high street. It's about creating that memorable moment and then engaging with the product and obviously the brand. You know, unboxing is now part of a kind of marketing communications plan. You know, we can sell on social media. I looked last night on Instagram and there was 1.7 million posts, which was hashtag unboxing. You know, so people are posting these unboxing experiences. So obviously it's good for brands, and we know it's big on YouTube. Again, you know, millions of posts and billions of views. So, you know, people are, you know, do enjoy that. And it's not just from sort of the influencer and celebrity perspective. You know, a lot of consumers are doing it. So I think it is that kind of that it being a gift, you know, and the joy and ultimately I think of this year, so it's bringing some positivity into people's lives, you know, having that, receiving something, you know, you've not gone out and enjoyed the experience of getting it, but now it's about receiving it into your home and, you know, having that experience of engaging with the brand and the product for the first time.
Jenny, can I just a question to Jenny? You know, do you think that there needs to be a choice between, you know, the beauty and hygiene, or is it something that we can bring together?
Yeah, I think it can definitely be married together. I don't think they're exclusive. I think that's the fear that people might have is, okay, well, I either have to compromise on one thing, but you don't. Like, even with your products, you can see that you don't need to compromise on something to still get that beautiful aspect to it. So I don't think there's any compromise there. I think it's just, like Paul said previously, like it's people's awareness for that hygiene and what they're touching has now creeped in further and further. So therefore, it's becoming to the forefront of people's minds as well. They're not mutually exclusive. You need to work together, and I don't think you just take away from one or the other. So I think you need to have both together, and that's the ultimate goal. And I also think, from what Helen's saying, you know, that experience, it's now people's first physical experience for their products are no longer on shelf. It's to your doorstep. So therefore, for a brand, that's really important. You're no longer getting that aspect where people can walk around the shop and touch things and understand it better and get to know your brand in a different way, how people would normally have done that previously. Now, because it's to your doorstep, that is your first experience. That's your most memorable experience of the brand staying there with you. So it's really important to get that experience correct. Some people are saying, you know, they want to make sure that they understand that they can easily recycle this afterwards or reuse it afterwards, you know, have that clarity. People don't want to be wading through lots of things to be open it, especially if they're concerned about the hygiene. If you have lots of bits and pieces, people will be now nervous if there's like 15 things to unwrap to get to it. So therefore, is it condensing that down, you know, less is more? Is it you've got a smaller surface space because you want to fill up your vans as much as possible, let's say. So you don't want to have massive boxes that have a shipping air. You want to make them condensed. If you're doing that, you've got less space to be able to communicate your brand to your consumer at home. So therefore, are there different ways, like augmented reality? Are there ways for people to connect? So before, like I would have said QR codes were going out of fashion in this side of the world before the pandemic. You'd find it massive still in like across Asia, a lot in India. It was being used a lot there for a lot of our clients. But then across Europe, people barely used QR codes. If you found it on a pack, you'd be like, this is quite old fashioned. And from what I've seen with everyone, you wouldn't normally put them on the packs that go across Europe. Whereas now everyone's using the QR codes for, you know, you go into a restaurant, you track and trace. It's really enhanced people's knowledge of that. And you can't take that back now. That is an amazing thing that's come out of this, that people have learned to use that technology, whereas it could have been a dying technology, and it's opened the doors for many other things and other experiences. So I think that's how people need to start realizing there's not just the pack. The pack has to be beautiful. It has to be engaging and not be a bad experience, but you can be going beyond the pack. And there's ways to do that now that before wouldn't have been imaginable, because people would have just looked at it and gone, I'm not going to get my phone out and scan that.
Those habits that we talked about. One thing that, you know, I haven't done myself, but I know people have, is like spraying the packaging. So if a package drops through the letterbox, they'll be spraying it with antibacterial, which obviously I don't think anyone would have done prior to the pandemic. So, but yeah, as part of that research that we've done, 41% of people are becoming increasingly concerned about what's coming into their house, which, you know, might contradict when you look at e-commerce sales, for example, and how they've increased during this time. But yeah, I think, you know, and going back to an earlier point about the outer packaging, the shipment packaging. We worked with IDP, a partner of ours, and creating the e-commerce packaging for Walpole. So the box and the corrugated outer that the box was shipped in was made with a product called Rydal within our portfolio that was actually treated with the PaperGard treatment. So, I think eventually we'll start to get to that point where it'll be all components of the packaging. And like Jenny said earlier, there's, you've got to think about actually how is it constructed, and, there's got to be that experience, there's got to be the hygiene, but then actually is sometimes less better. And you don't need to have, this robust package that takes 10 minutes and a large knife to get into. So.
Excellent. And Paul, can I bring you back in? Thank you, Stefan. Just to give us a bit of background about the PaperGard technology, the actual technology behind that innovation.
Yeah, just quickly, because I've been wanting to jump in actually on it, and I didn't want to be rude, is this morning before this, having breakfast with my wife, I experienced that exactly what you've just all been talking about. Was my wife not been able to go shopping? She likes to shop, has been buying presents, and she bought a designer T-shirt for one of our godsons. And she would have usually gone out and bought it and chose it, but she went online, found it, and this morning she came to me, and the box that it came in looked like an Amazon box without a smile on it. It just looked like that. But when she opened it, she said, "Look, I feel really happy that I've ordered this from a nice place." Because when she opened it up, there was some nice paper in there that was printed with the name of the designer shop. There was a sticker with their logo on. There was a lovely, beautifully presented envelope that had the receipt in a nice black colour envelope. And it could have well been one of yours. And it just looked perfect. And what it did is it actually... it reinforced to her the same experience she would have had of walking through that shop front, where I know now she'll buy there again because she knows she's got a good price because it was in the sale and it was delivered, the packaging was secure, and it just looked right. So I think it's so important, that psyche of that now, and that business now was one that it would have cost them pennies extra than shoving a bit of plain wrapping or bubble wrap in there to get it there to us. And it's just those little differences, I think, that's going to be a massive increase on the brands that do it right. I mean, just to touch on again where the technology comes in, and again, sorry to go back, but it touches on one of the other questions you asked, was the generational thing. With bacteria, there was very much a thing about in hospitals and things where I'd go to the elder generation, particularly my parents, and say, "Oh, well, I don't wash my hands. I eat apples off the tree. You're creating a problem, Paul. We need bacteria." And they are dead right. There are good bacteria and bad bacteria. What the PaperGard technology does is, in contact with the PaperGard technology, it's deactivating that virus so that it can't then carry on. And so that is the key bit, is in contact with it, you're deactivating it, and that's where you're creating the safety. And I think that it's so important that people know that viruses have been deactivated, because it isn't a good and bad bacteria scenario. It's a dangerous virus, and people are going to go looking for that more and more in the way it looks and the way it makes them feel in terms of their own safety. And I think those two things are going to be the key drivers.
Excellent, thank you. That's a really good way to understand it. Thanks, Paul. That's really helpful. Okay, so we're coming to a close, but I just wanted to ask you what you all of you individually think. 2020 has obviously brought us a pandemic, and we've all agreed, as we've talked today, that that's given us more of a focus on hygiene. And the aesthetics of the unboxing experience is still important, but hygiene has now become very, very high on the list. So what are your predictions for the future? Paul, as you're just talking now, I'll start with you, but what do you think, what does 2021 hold for us?
I hope that the vaccine helps. I think the vaccine is going to help people get out there more. I think that people talk about, will it lower the volumes of people that have got antiviral products? I think no, it'll do the opposite, because people will be able to go out more. They will be able to buy more goods. And so the increased demand will mean that people want the antiviral versions. I just hope we can get back to normal. Since March, I've had 6 days off, literally, because we've been so busy, and I love my holidays. And I think that everybody wants to get back to, seeing family more, being able to do what they want, not live in fear. And I think part of that not living in fear comes in using products that we know are going to protect us. So I think my hope for next year is that we can all get back to normal and get back to, and try and reduce the fear that we're all living with today.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and the same question to you, Helen. What's 2021 hold for you, and what are your thoughts for unboxing and the customer experience?
I think we'll see a lot of change. I think we've seen a lot of change in buying behaviour. So I think from sort of a packaging perspective and product perspective, I think we will see that increase in kind of sustainable materials, reusing, repurposing. As I mentioned before, I think I believe that there will be more, as we talked about before, that kind of positivity in packaging and thinking about that experience now of delivering straight to the home rather than in retail spaces. Although I do hope we can get back to retail spaces. I do worry about our town centres and shopping centres. So I do hope we start to feel more secure and get out there again. Okay, we'll see a change in buying behaviour, but hopefully more normality as well in that we can go into physical spaces as well as buy online.
Yeah, I think you'll all agree with that. We'll have had Christmas and we'll definitely want to get out and about, but we'll have to do it slowly and safely. Okay, Jenny, how about you? What do you predict for 2021?
Cool. So if I take it from I guess I agree with what everyone's been saying about getting a bit more back to normality and getting that blend of retail and online, and wanting to resolve all the fears, or at least, minimize them. But if I think of from a brand perspective and what we're seeing and what's already happening for 2021 and 2022 even, I think brands will be wanting to capture as wide an audience as possible. So therefore, people are having to look more on that direct to consumer. So there'll be a bigger increase in that. So I think transparency for brands is just going to become more and more important. Whilst people are having the ability to shop online and think more about what they're buying, people are wanting to understand more about where things have come from, and it's being displayed more openly. And I think there'll be a drive in that. I think we're just going to see a lot more people being conscious about the planet, the people, and businesses. So across that whole spectrum, that's what I think will be the shift seems to be going towards that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. Thank you, Jenny. So last but not least, Stefan, over to you. I know that James Cropper thankfully have continued to operate throughout 2020, and we're still very busy. But what are your predictions for next year?
I think today is an example of how all of us in different areas of the supply chain and different parts of different industries can come together and create solutions that enable that us to transition back to some form of normal behaviors. So there's some great examples already, and hopefully that continues through 2021. So at least towards the end of the year, we might be at some stage where people are going into a store and being able to take a box home to unbox and reveal. So yeah, I think just continued collaboration is going to benefit everyone.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that brings us to a close. So in answer to the original question, so will the consumer focus on hygiene mark the end of unboxing experiences? I would say that we've debated, and the answer is yes, in that it's going to change. So the unboxing experience will be ended as we know it, and with consumers thinking the way that they have thought. But also the answer is also no. We are still going to have beautiful unboxing experiences with the help of the likes of the people around the table today. And aesthetics and hygiene really both play a big part in any brand's story. And we want to make sure that consumers can have a hygienic and safe but pleasant experience in the future, and certainly in 2021 it'll be very interesting to see what happens. So that just leaves me to thank you all for attending and giving your insights. It'll be very interesting. Thank you very much for your time. you.